Do you know, normally at this point, Portia would join us on the stage to share her thoughts with you in person after that video. She's not here this evening because her daughter, Layla Elizabeth, has been on our stage on the screens behind our speakers this evening. There she is. Providing a poignant reminder of why we're here. All right, time to move on now to our featured speaker. And you know his name. Dinesh D'Souza is a best-selling author. He is an award-winning filmmaker and a renowned political thinker. In 2015, Obama's America, and in 2016, Hillary's America helped shape the political discussion in this country. Any Rotarians in the room this evening? I'm sure there are many. Dinesh was born in Mumbai, India, and came to this country on a Rotary scholarship. He went to Dartmouth. He obviously belonged because he went from Dartmouth to the Reagan White House. He has been an Olin Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute and a Rishwain Fellow at Stanford University. The New York Times calls him one of the great conservative thinkers, and the World Affairs Council says that he is one of the world's experts on international issues. Believing that abortion has become the ultimate litmus test in the political world of the left, as well as the number one issue determining the merits of a political candidate in our world today, Mr. D'Souza asserts that in the church of modern liberalism, abortion has become a sacrament. I invite you to watch a short segment of Hillary's America on the screens behind me.
He's a man of a searching and versatile intellect. He is a man who can bridge cultures and understands history and scholarship and politics and theology and philosophy.
My guest this week is an author, a filmmaker, a former policy advisor to Ronald Reagan,
Mr. Dinesh D'Souza.
This American dream is a dream not just of economic opportunity or success, but it's ultimately a dream where you can be the architect of your own destiny.
I grew up in a different world, actually a world without America. And although I grew up without a phone, without television, without hot water, we had a car, but if you looked down the floor of our car, you could see the ground.
He's been described as an influential conservative thinker. He's a best-selling author, political commentator, and filmmaker.
The great man, Dinesh D'Souza, a patriotic man.
No longer would I say that I live in a rarefied world of intellectual debate. I've seen the upside of America, and I've seen the downside of America. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't trade the United States for any other country. At the end of the day, my enthusiasm for American government may have dimmed, but my enthusiasm for this country burns brighter than ever. Thank you very much.
So now you know why the room is full and sold out this evening. So please give a warm North Florida welcome to a gentleman who shall shape the discussion on key issues in this country and who shares our value of life. Please welcome Dinesh D'Souza. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wow. This is an amazing event. I'm very thrilled and honored to be here. I'm not normally a pro-life speaker, by which I mean I don't typically speak on this topic. I speak mostly on college campuses, to business groups, civic groups. Only a couple times a year do I have the privilege and the opportunity to speak before a group like this. In my opinion, it is the worthiest of all causes. You know, in American politics, we have two sides, typically competing on both sides of an issue. And generally, when you look at one side and you look at the other side, you realize that both sides have something that they want. Both sides are trying to get something out of it for themselves. In a debate about trade or tax policy, you're going to have unions on the one side who want pay increases, and you have entrepreneurs on the other side who are looking to cut costs. I spoke last week at a trade group in the Midwest. These are young entrepreneurs who make containers and boxes, and they're great guys, and they're patriotic, and they're fighting for lower taxes and less regulation. But they too want something out of the political system for themselves. And on this issue, abortion, it is true that when you look at the other side, they have, you might say, an abortion industry. There's a lot of money involved. They get a lot of money from the government. They make a lot of money off of abortion. They too want something for themselves. But then we turn to this most mysterious group in American politics, the pro-life community. And we ask the question, what is it that the pro-lifers want for themselves? And the clear and obvious answer is nothing. Here is a group, almost unique in American politics, that is not trying to lower its taxes or hold on to its guns. It's not trying to push for this or push for that. It's actually motivated by that rarest of human qualities, which is pure altruism. If more lives are saved in America, you're not better off, but still you're here, and still you're willing to give your time and your resources, and still you're willing to fight, and you're willing to ally yourselves with the Women's Help Center. So this is a very, to me, unique group and a very unique cause. And it's a unique cause at a very strange and peculiar time in American politics. Look at the politics around us, and some of you have been here in America longer than I have. I came in the late 70s, but this is not the politics of the Reagan era. In fact, Trump is not Reagan. And my wife is a young Reaganite, as I was, and she says, "Oh gosh, Trump, man, he's out of control. He can throw a knockout punch, but you're a little nervous he might knock himself out of the ring." She says, I kind of wish we had Reagan. But I don't. I think actually Trump is the man of the hour. The man of the hour. Now I say this because watching American politics now over the better part of a generation, it is a very strange fact of politics that sometimes the guy who has the cause close to his heart, who has sort of lived the life, who displays the character, who has the credentials, does not turn out to be the guy who delivers the goods. I noticed this, for example, watching Reagan on the one hand, and Bush, this is George H.W. Bush, and Bob Dole on the other. Now, Bush and Dole were both genuine war heroes. Both had served with great distinction. Bush was a bomber pilot. Dole had served with distinction. And yet, here was the strange fact. The military, the Marines, adored Reagan. Reagan was not a war hero. In fact, Reagan, during World War II, made war movies. But, oddly enough, the very guy who did not have this personal distinction, if you will, to boast of, had the ability to articulate, you might say, the martial virtues much more effectively than two authentic military heroes. And so it is with Trump. I remember even in the era of George W. Bush, we would all be exhilarated every time the pro-life issue was mentioned in a presidential address. Here's Trump, who seems to come out of nowhere with no history of loyalty and commitment to this issue, and yet in 3 months has done more for the pro-life cause than certainly any political candidate, any political personality since Reagan. I think you all realize the stakes of this election. For me, the exhilaration and relief and sheer elation of November 8th is still not fully subsided. And quite frankly, the surprise and dismay on the other side has not subsided either. I'm somewhat reminded of the opening scene in Paradise Lost where the rebel angels, according to Milton, are hurled headlong flaming from the ethereal sky down into bottomless perdition and destruction. And here they begin to sort of regroup, bumping into each other, filled with hate and resentment, plotting revenge. And this, I think, is a pretty good summary of the Democratic Party right now. Quite honestly, I didn't think that Trump would make it. Election day, I thought, was going to be a bad one. Not only because Hillary had so much going for her, the resources, the incredible Clinton machine, a divided Republican Party. Usually the Republicans we need our team and we need someone their team. And our own team was split. And then finally you had the media almost blatantly in the Hillary camp. And every day you turn on the TV, you'll remember this. You see these anchors and these journalists. I mean, huffing and puffing to drag the crooked hag across the finish line. They tried. And then literally, immediately on Trump's accession, in a few masterful strokes, essentially we saved the Supreme Court. Yep. Whatever you think of Trump, that was a nomination that was handled masterfully. And I say this because, you know, we live in a time when the court is precariously divided. It shouldn't be divided. Most of those guys and women on the court, most of them are Republican nominees. But there's kind of a difference. The left, the Democrats, can count with Euclidean certitude that its nominees will vote its way every time. For Republicans, it's kind of a toss of the coin. What's Anthony Kennedy thinking about today? Oh, we got Kennedy, wow. Oops, we lost Roberts. What I'm trying to say is that there is a disproportion of commitment on the two sides. They have 4 votes, but they get them every time. We should have 5 votes, but very often we end up with 4, if not 3. It's very important for presidents to realize the stakes involved. Literally, one may say, millions of lives hang in the balance. I think Trump recognizes that. Now, we're here to talk about saving lives and a culture of life. And I want to begin with a kind of a mystery. And the mystery is simply the fact that here we are 50 years after Roe versus Wade, more than half a century later. You have this unbelievable loss of life, 50 million plus casualties in the post-Roe era, something that even dwarfs the scale of the casualties of the Holocaust, of World War II. And how is it that in a decent country, a good country, a country dedicated to all men are created equal, a country dedicated to the proposition that we are given our rights by our Creator, we have a right to life. How has this happened, and how can we possibly turn the tide? Without seeing why it happened, it's very difficult to know what to do about it. Certainly at one level we need to fix the court. But at a deeper level we have to ask, what is it about the soul of America that seems to have lost its way? And the abortion legacy in America is enough to shake one's patriotism, make one question one's commitment to whether or not this is a good country. How can such bad things happen in an allegedly good country? As an immigrant, I very much feel the force of these questions. I was at a pro-life event, this is now a couple of years ago, and there was a very committed young woman who had a folder that she opened up to show me, and in it were literally the pictures of mangled bodies of unborn children. And she said to me, it is my mission, it is her mission, to put these images in front of every American. She said, because if I can do that, if I can actually make people see what abortion is, unquestionably the practice would come to an immediate end, because the human conscience will just revolt and no one will stand for this kind of thing going on. And I remember, not at the time, but later, sort of reflecting on this question and reflecting on whether that's in fact true. If it's possible to actually take every person in America and show them the full, unvarnished reality of abortion, what would the impact of that be? Remember, we are living at a time when abortion is not just an issue, it is actually at the center of one of the two major political parties in America, namely the Democratic Party. It is a key part of the Democratic platform. No candidate can reach the top of the Democratic Party today while dissenting on that issue. They can dissent on other issues. They can dissent on gay marriage. They can't dissent on abortion. It has become a kind of cardinal principle. I was quoted earlier as saying a sacrament inside the church of modern liberalism. And what makes this particularly strange is that this is a party whose general political principle is compassion. And so you've got a party that essentially wants health care in order to extend compassion to people who need health care and can't afford it, and wants the rich to pay more so that there's more money available to have food stamps and other benefits for people who need it. This is a party that fights for the snail darter and the illegal immigrant. This is a party that cares about things that happen to faraway people in faraway countries. And so you've got a party that boasts that its tentacles of compassion reach far and wide. It's the progressive party, the party of the future. And yet this is the very party that goes, you may say, blind, or goes blank, or whose compassion suddenly vanishes when it comes to the unborn, who are right in front of us, part of the texture of our everyday lives. And so again, my question is sort of, what's really going on here? I think part of what's going on is that, first of all, we don't realize, this was alluded to here today a couple times, the degree to which these principles of life that we believe in, the preciousness of life, the sacredness of life, even the principle of compassion, these are principles that are embedded within Christianity. They came into the West and they came into the world because of Christianity. These are not principles that are somehow universal. When I was a kid growing up in India, we learned a proverb. It sounds kind of harsh. The tears of strangers are only water. Sounds like a very crude way to think, but it's actually the normal way to think. In most of the world, the general belief is that we have obligations to our own family and lesser obligations to our relatives and even lesser ones to our neighbors and maybe lesser ones to our tribe. But if you're some other guy, we might wish you well, but it's not our problem. Now, American culture has become rapidly secularized in the last generation, which is to say that its Christian underpinnings have been diluted and eroded. And so some of these Christian principles, like the preciousness of life, again, these are not universal. You just have to go back into Western culture itself before Christianity, ancient Greece and Rome. Well, in the culture of Athens and Sparta, the unwanted child was deposited on the hillside in the winter, only to be found dead in the morning. And that's not even the real scandal. The real scandal is that the greatest and the most humane of the Greek and Roman thinkers, Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, knew about this, but they were fine with it. They considered it to be no big deal. Why? Because the idea that life is precious, that life is sacred, that life is a gift, this was actually alien to pre-Christian Greece and Rome. It came into the West with Christianity itself. And so my point is that as Christianity begins to weaken in our culture, these Christian values automatically go with it. This isn't just my view. The atheist philosopher Nietzsche, he predicted this. He said, when you lose God, he says you lose what he called shadows of God. And I'm suggesting that the belief in the dignity of life is a shadow of God in the world. Second point I want to make is that I believe that on the political left, the reason that abortion is so central is that the way the Democrats look at the issue is not ultimately about abortion, it's about the sexual revolution. The sexual revolution. And it is widely believed on the left that if you have a sexual revolution, you're going to have unwanted children. And so, if you question what's going to happen to these unwanted children, you are putting into question the sexual revolution itself. In other words, abortion is the debris of the sexual revolution. And the belief on the left is that if we're going to hold to this sexual revolution, if we're not going to try to roll it back in any way, if we're going to go with it and consider it to be a permanent feature of American life, we simply have to learn to live with the consequences. As the Marxists used to say, if you want to make an omelet, you have to break some eggs. And so this brings me right back to the question I raised earlier, that if you show the pictures and if people see the reality of the situation, the reason they don't see is they don't want to see. To them, these are irreversible social changes to which they are committed. When they call themselves progressives, this is what they mean by progress. Progress to them means certain things. It isn't a vague term. It means centralized government control. It ultimately means moving society in a certain type of specific direction. What makes this abortion issue so strange is that when you look at the actual merits of the issue, there is actually no valid argument at all for the so-called pro-choice position. The pro-choice position obviously stands behind the banner of choice. It claims to be, you may say, on the side of freedom. But if you think about it, and if you were to ask someone, how does anyone get the freedom? How do you ever get the right to kill an unborn kid? Well, their answer is, well, first of all, we're not really sure that it is a human life. People disagree, different traditions disagree. I'm kind of quoting the Supreme Court. In the Roe decision itself, we don't know when life begins. Well, even if that were true, one would think that one would err on the side of life. It's kind of like you're a hunter. You think you see a deer, but it could be your neighbor. We don't know which it is. Well, don't shoot. Don't shoot. Or the argument is that abortion is a constitutional right. Now, this is odd. You can pick up the Constitution, you can read it, you can hold it up to the light, squeeze lemon juice on it. No abortion right appears. It doesn't seem to be in the Constitution. And when you look at groups like Planned Parenthood, they're not even saying that abortion's in the Constitution. They are treating it as a right superior to every other existing right in the Constitution. So the right that's not in the Constitution trumps all the rights that are in the Constitution. Now you might say, well, what are you talking about, Dinesh? Well, consider this. It's the position of Planned Parenthood that if a woman's too poor to have an abortion, the government should pay for it. That's their position. Now ask yourself, the Bill of Rights lays out innumerable basic rights. The First Amendment, right to free speech, right to religion, right to assembly, right to vote, and so on and so on. Which of these fundamental rights are funded by the government? None of them. You have a First Amendment right to free speech. Does the government pay you for a newspaper? No. You have a Second Amendment right to own a gun. Does the government actually give you a gun? No. You have a right to free assembly, but on your own time, pal. You have a right to religion. Is the government going to build you a church? Not only no, but it can't. It's forbidden to do it. So ultimately, what is being argued for abortion is such a special status that this right alone of all our fundamental rights somehow deserves funding. In other words, by funding, I don't just mean the government pays for it. I mean you and I pay for it. In other words, those of us who regard this as a moral abomination, who actually regard it as a form of homicide, are made to pay the tab so that others can actually perform these executions. This is the situation that we live in today. Now, how do we think about this? Where does all this come from? And in fact, I want to raise a deep question about the origin of this whole concept of pro-choice. I was reading a study, of all things, of the Lincoln-Douglas debates between Abraham Lincoln and Stephen Douglas. Stephen Douglas was the Northern Democrat from Illinois. And they were discussing the issue of slavery. And Douglas makes an argument on slavery. Now, what's interesting about slavery is we often think slavery was between the North and the South. No. The secession debate was between the North and the South. One of the points I tried to make in the movie Hillary's America is the slavery debate was not between the North and the South. It was between the pro-slavery Democratic Party and the anti-slavery Republican Party. And you see this in the Lincoln-Douglas debates. Douglas was a Northern Democrat. Slavery... So here's Douglas's view. Douglas says that in a big country, there are some people who are pro-slavery and there are other people who are against it. Douglas says his own position is to take no position. He says we have to agree to disagree. We're a big country, we have to figure out a way to get along. And so he goes, I've got a solution. Why don't we let each community, each territory, each state decide for itself if it wants abortion? If it wants slavery, sorry. It should vote slavery up or vote slavery down. And how it votes, Douglas says, I don't care. That's your decision. Now, if you think about this, this is actually the origin of the pro-choice argument. Because although today we're talking about the choice of individuals, and Douglas was talking about the choice of communities, the basic idea is completely the same. It is the right of each entity, in Douglas's case communities, in our case individuals, to decide about slavery, yes or no. Yes or no. To this, Lincoln made a rebuttal, which I think is the core of the pro-life argument today. Basically, Lincoln said, we are all for choice, but it makes absolutely no sense to talk about choice without reference to what is being chosen. In other words, yes, communities can make decisions about their own lives, but Lincoln says it is a contradiction of the principle of choice when you use it to deprive some other guy of his choice. How can you use the choice to enslave some other guy so that he has no choices? That makes no sense at all. And so similarly here, pro-choice, yes, but not when the choice involves canceling out someone else's choices for the entirety of their lives. The point I'm actually making is that this Democratic Party, which was, by the way, for well over 50 years, the relentless defender of slavery, both in the North and in the South, is the same party that has essentially moved its pro-choice argument over to the fate of the unborn. Now, here we are at what would seem to be an exhilarating moment of American politics. We won the presidency, we have the Congress, at the very least we have evened it out on the court. If we get one more nomination, if Ruth Bader Ginsburg even coughs, we have the court. And yet, it doesn't seem like we're fully triumphant. It almost seems like we're still in like a fight to the finish. Why is that? What's going on? What I want to suggest is, and this is part of taking the scope of our whole situation, that in fact the battle of politics only occurs in one corner of the battlefield. That there's a much larger battlefield, and in fact, most Republicans don't know this. They're in a huddle to figure out, how do we win the election? For 2 years before Trump, everyone kept asking me, what about the Republican Congress? We have the House, we have the Senate. How is it that nothing seems to get accomplished? And then these kind of rumors begin to spread. Well, the reason we're having nothing accomplished is because Boehner is a wimp. McConnell's a wimp. But then you think about, why is that? Why are they wimps? Do they want Obama to win and Hillary? No. Part of the reason people behave the way they do, our people, is that they're terrified of the media. Why? Because the media has the power to humiliate. And this power is so effective that once they're done with you, if they are able to prosecute their case, your condition is so lamentable that your own side will bury you. And the weapons that are used in this are not only investigative journalism and hearings and exposés, but also the devastating weapon of ridicule. Ridicule. Ridicule is the defining motif of our culture. Now, on the left, you've got this army of comedians. Look at what's happening to Trump every day. Every day, Trump has to take on, he's dealing with Ellen DeGeneres, Bill Maher, Stephen Colbert, John Oliver, Jon Stewart. The list goes on. On Trump's side, well, we have nobody, 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 and nobody. Now remember, what I'm saying is that a lot of young people get their sense of humor, their sense of style, the way they walk, the way they talk, not to mention political information from these dudes. And So this is the landscape of the larger battlefield. Politics is in one corner of it, and what the left has done politically is over the last generation, they have made a long march through the three most important institutions of our culture, namely academia, the media, and Hollywood. These three operate in tandem as a kind of triangle. Academics issue studies, other academics praise them, they're lavishly lionized in the media, then Steven Spielberg makes a movie, or Michael Moore makes a movie, and so there's a sort of reverberating effect. These are the three biggest megaphones of our culture. And this is the source of our real opposition. This is the source of Trump's real opposition. It's not the Democratic Party. If you match the two parties in terms of governorships, local offices, the House, the Senate, the Congress, the presidency, we're winning. But the reason that we're not winning straight out is we have a deadlier opponent than the Democratic Party. And that is this megaphone collusion on the part of academia, Hollywood, and the media. And it's very important to realize that many times the cause is fought there first, long before it even enters the domain of politics. Consider the gay marriage debate. I live in California, part-time in Texas. People always ask me, what happened to the gay marriage debate? I thought people were against gay marriage. Well, the problem is this, that this gay marriage debate did not begin when it was being argued at the court or in the Congress. This gay marriage debate began 2 decades ago when Ellen came out of the closet, and Will and Grace and 400 sitcoms. It was fought in the culture. That's how the hearts of our very children were taken from under our noses, so that by the time the issue came to politics, it was like a fait accompli. America had already sort of changed its mind. And it changed its mind without a single political argument, pro or con, just because there was a sort of shift in which homosexuality went from being ew to being cool, to being funny, to being interesting. So this cultural shift preceded the political shift, and so it is with the pro-life issue. There is a relentless effort on the part of academia and the media. If you look at movies, if you look at TV shows, there are certain stock villains. One stock villain is definitely the business guy, who's usually a really bad guy. Another stock villain is the small town pastor, who's generally considered to be kind of a Nazi. In all kinds of movies, My Cousin Vinny, who's the bad guy? It's small town sheriffs and small town pastors. So this is I call it the meta story, the meta story. You know, in politics, we zoom in on small lies. If you want to keep your doctor, you can keep your doctor. Retail lie. Oh, the Benghazi thing, that was due to a video. Retail lie. The wholesale lies are the big lies behind the retail lies. They're the compass that guides the whole coverage of an issue. One big meta lie, one big retail, wholesale lie that I'm writing about now. Trump is a fascist. Trump is a fascist. Now think about this. Who's saying that Trump is a fascist? The people saying this are these groups of people. You see them at the inauguration. You see them on the campus. They're called anti-fascists. But to look at them, they look like Mussolini's black shirts. They're dressed in black from head to toe. They wear masks. They carry weapons. They carry bicycle locks and chains. They carry sticks and baseball bats. They are actually there to hit people. They're there to break windows. They're there to overturn cars. They're there to set things on fire. They're doing it in the name of fighting fascism, supposedly. So, where does this leave us? Part of what I'm trying to say tonight is that this cause, the cause of helping women, giving them pregnancy tests, giving them counseling, giving them spiritual guidance, is occurring bravely in the teeth of a culture of destruction, of anti-life, a culture that is blowing hard a wind against us, and we're up against it. You know this if you send your kids off to college. Each of them has to become like a little Trump to withstand what's going on. The thing I love about Trump is that instinctively, see, Trump is not ideological, he's instinctive, but his instincts are incredible. Even Reagan's approach was more narrow. Reagan's approach was, look, I cannot change the world in 30 ways. I can change the world in 2 or maybe 3 ways. So I'm going to focus on inflation, taxes, the Soviet Union, and that's pretty much it. I'm going to let everything else kind of go. That's not Trump. Here's Trump. He's fixing the Supreme Court. He's trying to get rid of Obamacare. He's writing executive orders. He's doing this. He's doing that. And at the same time, he's swatting Meryl Streep over here. He's taking on Saturday Night Live over there. Having come out of popular culture, Trump understands the centrality of that issue. I know it's been a trope in the pro-life movement now for a generation that we focus on one issue, single issue voters. But part of what I've been trying to say is that our issue is embedded in a web of issues. And also our cause is linked to a team. You can see this in the slavery debate, by the way, by asking this question: who ended slavery? Was it the abolitionists who made the passionate, single-issue, moral and emotional case against slavery? No. If it were up to the abolitionists, slavery would still be going on. The abolitionists, in fact, were politically not that effective. A lot of the times when they had meetings, one of their common activities was to burn the US Constitution. Why? Because they said the Constitution was a devil's pact with slavery. Slavery was not ended by the abolitionists. Slavery was ended by the Republican Party and by the Union armies between 1860 and 1865. That's a fact. So, what it means is simply this, that for the pro-life cause to win, it has to attach itself and integrate itself into a winning team that will actually be about a whole bunch of issues that are not related immediately to the pro-life cause. But we make common cause with them because together we comprise a winning team. This is what happens on the left automatically. They do it on every issue. They unite with each of their disparate issues so that their common cause can prevail. And similarly now, Trump, unpredictable though he is, Trump is our guy. Trump is our guy. And finally, I just want to say that most of us in life, as in politics, and even in philanthropy, we use a very small portion of our actual influence. You want to know what to do about the media? One of the best things you can do is become more active on social media. Why? Because social media is a little magazine. You say, well, yeah, I only have 100 friends on Facebook. Yeah, but they have 100 friends on Facebook. So if you can create content and get it out there, it's going to multiply. It's going to replicate itself. I have on this thing called, Twitter. We hear about Twitter because Trump does Twitter. Very subversive act by Trump to use Twitter. Why? Because it's the one way of communicating that is not filtered through the media. Through the media. Now, I have 500,000 people on Twitter who follow my Twitter. That's a lot of people. That's about as many as are watching CNN tonight. So use your influence and also do more. Do more. I say this to entrepreneurs all the time. You are busy with your business, but you need to support the ecosystem of capitalism that makes your success possible. Here we are in this room, and our lives have been made good in America. I have seen in my life the American dream. But we have to fight for the America that we believe in, because that America can no longer be taken for granted. That's probably the main difference between us and our parents and grandparents. They could take that America for granted. By tragic necessity, it is our destiny to have to fight for it. And finally, here we are with one way to fight for it. We have the Women's Help Center. And on the surface of it, that little building, it all looks so simple. And it all looks maybe even a little paltry. But ironically, in today's society, to put up a pregnancy center sign and to offer spiritual counseling and to talk women out of the idea of killing their own kids. Think about this. The tragedy of abortion isn't just that a woman kills a child, it's that a woman kills her own child. And it is in today's culture a subversive act to stand up against this. And that's what the Women's Help Center is doing. It's doing a lot of practical good, but it's also making a formidable cultural statement. And the reason this is also controversial is that the cultural wind is blowing very hard the other way. The good news is that all of us in this room, even us, 800 of us, 1,000 of us, our collective power is huge if we knew how to use it. So, my message to you is to support the Women's Health Center, support the cause. Ask what you can do. A lot of times young people come to me and they say, where should I go when I graduate? Should I go to the National Review or the Heritage Foundation or work for National Right to Life? And I say to themselves, don't ask that question, where should I go? Ask yourself, what needs to be done? What needs to be done? You want to counter the influence of the left in shaping the world of comedy? Start a young people's comedy channel. Now, it's going to take some time because the reason Bill Maher's so good at what he does is he started 25 years ago. He started in some small improv in LA doing the Beatles thing 8 days a week. We haven't done that, but we have to start. So we are at the point where we need political change, and we're getting it, but we also need moral and cultural change. And for me, the political issues are up here, and the moral issues are down here, even deeper. And underneath that, the spiritual issue, which is to say, I think we all know that the abortion issue, of all the issues, is embroiled. It's part of a larger battle of spiritual warfare. Spiritual warfare. And we are the foot soldiers in that battle. And I just want to say in conclusion that for me it is a great honor as a foot soldier to join you. May our cause prevail. If not now, when? And if not us, who? Thank you very much. Thank you.